On tonight, we will look at several scriptures that I want you to take note of. This week, we have been talking about anger. On Monday, we talked about the fact that the hatred that we see in the world when it comes to wars, when it comes to attacks like what we see Hamas doing with Israel, that anger is fueled by hatred. And hatred will certainly cause you to respond in a very ugly and unkind way. Tonight, we want to continue talking about anger, but all anger is not fueled by hatred. Sometimes anger can be fueled by something else. Think about it, for example. We have television shows like Neighborhood Wars, showing neighbors caught on camera fighting one another, acting out toward one another. We have shows like Road Wars that show people with road rage incidents caught on camera. There's a show called Customer Wars, and it shows people in retail establishments and restaurants acting out their anger. So all these caught on camera shows that demonstrate that people are angry. Not only that, but we find that there's a lot of conflict in churches. People are angry. Ask somebody these days about their spouse or their family members. And sometimes the veins pop out in their head because things aren't always the way we would hope they would be for others. You even find these days that people seem to be hypersensitive. Have you ever noticed how often you have to say, "I'm sorry" nowadays? Something you said was taken the wrong way. People seem to be so easily offended. And you have to say, "Well, that's not what I meant." You have to almost walk on eggshells because people are just so sensitive about everything and so soon pushed to anger. Why are people so angry? Well, anger is not always fueling hatred. Sometimes anger is fueled by frustration. People today are very frustrated, and what you see is them acting in anger because they are frustrated. One of the problems is that we have gone back to our pre-pandemic norms. You remember when the pandemic happened and the world was shut down? People were talking about how nice it was to not have to sit in traffic. People were working in their gardens. They were cleaning out the attic. They were organizing photo albums. I heard so many people say, "Oh, I caught up with friends I haven't talked to in years. I talked to family members I haven't talked to in years." During the shutdown, people were saying, "Oh, I took a walk today. I sat on my porch and heard the birds sing." It seems that now that we are post-pandemic, we've resorted back to all of those pre-pandemic norms, all that stuff that made us hostile and angry and frustrated. So that's why people are so sensitive. That's why relationships are broken. That's why road rage continues to soar and neighborhood wars continue to exist. And restaurants and retails are dealing with angry employees or angry customers. People have not learned to deal with their frustration, and their frustration is fueling their anger, and their anger is fueling their frustration. I want you to think about some examples in the Bible and encourage you to read these examples. I want you to see that you're not the first person to experience anger, and see what you can learn from these examples. For example, in Exodus chapter 32, in particular, verse number 19, you see Moses is angry. God had written on the tablets and given them to Moses. And Moses sees what the people are doing. They've made this golden calf. They're down there dancing, and they are acting as if they lost their minds. In his anger, he ends up breaking the tablets and rushing down there to get these people and stop the people from the nonsense they were doing. Moses was angry. He was frustrated. Another time he was frustrated is in Numbers chapter 20. When you read verses 10 through 12, you discover the people were thirsty, and God told Moses, "Speak to the rock." And Moses ended up calling God's people rebels, and he struck the rock twice. He didn't speak to it, he struck the rock twice. He was frustrated with the people. My favorite book of the Bible is Nehemiah. And in Nehemiah chapter 13, verses 19 through 21, Nehemiah was frustrated with the people. So much so that Nehemiah said, "If you all do this again, I will lay hands on you." What they were doing was disobeying God's law regarding the Sabbath. They were doing things that violated that law. And in so many words, he's saying, we just got out of a spiritual mess, and here you all go again. If you do this again, I am going to slap you. He was frustrated. Did you know Peter experienced frustration? And John 18 and verse number 10, the Bible talks about Peter and his response to Malchus, and he cut off the man's ear. He was frustrated. Now, for those of you taking notes, let me just give you these scriptures again. Exodus 32, in particular, verse 19. Numbers chapter 20, verses 10 through 12. Nehemiah chapter 13, verses 19 through 21. And John chapter 18 and verse 10. Here's something I want you to notice in these 4 examples from the Bible about frustration. Did you notice that each time the person was frustrated, it was because of what someone else was or was not doing? Do you know that many times we are frustrated is because other people are doing things that aggravate us or frustrate us? Do you notice that it may not be what they do, it may be what they are not doing? What does that tell you about frustration? We allow other people to control our mental and emotional state by giving them the power to frustrate us. Listen, when you go to glory, people are going to continue doing stupid things, saying stupid things, and acting in stupid ways. You cannot regulate other people's behavior. You will always be frustrated when other people are not doing what you think they should be doing. Even if you're right about what they should be doing, you have no control over that. The fact that we are social creatures and the fact that we engage and interact with others makes it quite likely, quite probable that other people are going to do or not do, they're going to say or not say those things that bring us frustration. You see, we have to identify the source of our frustration. And more times than not, we are the source of our own frustration because we allow those things and those people to get under our skin. And we have to be in better control of ourselves. I want you to think about, what can you change? What can you control? Who can you change? Who can you control? Have a perspective. Have the perspective that I can only change me and I can only control me. Another perspective that you may want to gain is that most things in our minds are a crisis or an emergency that in reality don't rise to that level. But because we have an emotional stake, we amplify or magnify the problem to a level that may not be true to reality. So you act as if it is a major problem, when in reality you only process it as a major problem. You've got to have some faith in God to let Him handle what you cannot handle. The Bible tells us in Ephesians 4:26, be angry and sin not. Do you know one of the biggest sins that you can have in your anger is not what you do to others, but it's what you do to yourself, allowing yourself to be changed mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, changed for the worse because you've allowed others to affect you in such a way that they change your mental well-being, your emotional balance, and your spiritual joy and peace are taken. Don't allow yourself to fuel your frustration by your anger and to fuel your anger by your frustration. You can't change other people, but you can change yourself. Take some time to think through things, to think through situations, and take time to really process so that you don't allow things and people to get the best of you. Don't let folks send you to an early grave, because long after your early grave, people are going to keep being people. This has been another installment of A Few Minutes with the Minister.